In this basic series, we have so far been looking at how to create such project overviews and work with subpages in general with the Pages section. We've also checked out how to create rich forms with the Fields section and how to add fields. And in this video, I want to check out how to work with files in more detail. So far, we only created a very rough gallery here with some few settings, and I want to show you more settings for the Files section. So to remember, the Files section, the Fields section, and the Pages section, they are the most important parts for the panel to create all those kinds of highly customized page types that we are working with. And let's have a look again at the blueprint and how this looks like so far. So we go to Site, Blueprints, Pages, and there's our project.yaml. And scrolling down, this is the field definition that we've done last time. And here's our gallery. So we used the gallery section, gave it a gallery name here, and then used the files section type. And the only thing that we did so far is we switched the layout to cards and we set up a ratio of 1:1, which makes it square. And this is basically it, but there's so much more you can do with this. And Kirby is kind of special in a way that it stores files or assets for your pages. So most systems have a global asset management editor or whatever you want to call it, where you upload your assets first and you organize them there and then you link them with your pages. And with Kirby, it's a bit different because we prefer to store assets, images, PDFs, spreadsheets, whatever you have for your pages, in page folders. So when you go to your content folder to a particular project, all the images would be stored there. And the idea behind that is that it is a very natural way to organize your files. It's pretty much like you would do it all the time when you work on your disk in your own folder system. And it also kind of nicely creates this organization for every file according to your pages that you oftentimes in an asset manager have to rebuild otherwise. So in most asset managers, you have to have some kind of organization. So you have to create additional folders or work with tags or whatever to find your assets again. So and this is kind of solved by this. But that doesn't mean that you can't have global assets. So you can still store assets in your content folder and then have them available via the site object, and then you can use that as global assets. But we are not going to focus on that in this video. We are going to focus on storing images or any other file type with your pages. And this is exactly what the sections do, the file section do anyway by default when you set it up like this. So when you set it up like this, it will automatically upload new images into that folder. And I will demonstrate that quickly. So let's just remove all of those. And then just upload a couple files. So the gallery is now empty. And we can upload a demo file here. And it will again be uploaded to this pages folder automatically. And you can see it will also create such a text file for us. I mentioned it in another video that those text files are automatically linked with the images that we upload or the videos that we upload by creating or by reusing the same file name. So we have the same file name plus .txt, and this creates the links between those files. And in those text files, we have the same fields that we use for pages. So we can now create some alternative text field, for example, for this image, put it in here and create additional fields if we need to. So this is how Kirby stores metadata for images and other assets. And when we click on the image, we get to the file view, and we haven't checked out the file view yet. So this is the file view where you get a simple overview of the file itself. So you get a preview if possible. You can see the MIME type, you can see the URL, the dimensions, the file size, the landscape, the orientation if available. So just as a quick overview of what kind of file this is. And then you have the typical things that you can do here. So we can now rename the file, for example, and by renaming it here, it will rename it as well on our disk. So we now have a renamed original file, and we also have a renamed metadata file, and Kirby takes care of that without us doing that manually. We can also replace the image here, so the file name stays the same, but the original or the source is being updated. And of course, we can also delete it here or go to the file in our browser. So far, so good. But as you can see, there is no blueprint for it yet. So we don't have fields for it here. And we can't store such an alternative text for the image yet, as we did in the text file a few seconds ago. So we somehow need to find a way to create those blueprints for files. And we so far did this only for pages. So let me show you how to create blueprints for files. I'm going to close this, and we are going to a blueprints folder in the site folder. And you can see the blueprints folder is already organized into subfolders. So there is a pages subfolder by default in here. And this is where all our pages blueprints are. And if we want to create a files blueprint, we can do that by adding a files folder. So most of the times the files folder is probably not there yet, especially when you start with the plain kit. So just create that yourself, and then you can get started with the first blueprint file, which should normally be the default blueprint. We call it file, and then we can start adding fields, or we could start adding sections like we did for pages. But so far we only need some fields, so we used the fields here, and we are adding a alternative text field. By creating that default YAML blueprint file, this will now be available for any file that doesn't have a specific template or doesn't load a specific blueprint. So now we can see the alternative text field here, and we can fill it in nice image. And just to make sure it's all working correctly, to show you where it's stored, we can open the text file again for that image, and we can see that the alternative text appeared in here. So this is working just fine, and yeah, this is great. And by doing this, we could now add additional fields here for all our files, and then just store additional information for all files. But this is a bit limited in terms of what kind of data we can store for every file that we upload. So for example, alternative text or a caption or a photographer or a license makes total sense for images, but it doesn't make any sense when we upload PDFs, for example. Or looking back at our gallery here, so we might want to create such a gallery here where we have additional layout options stored with every image. Maybe how the image should be aligned, or how it should be cropped, or stuff like this. And this might be very specific to such a particular gallery here for this project. And then we might have an additional shop where we also have galleries, but those galleries have completely different settings. So we somehow need a way to create multiple blueprints for different types of files. And having a look at our content folder again, this has been very easy for pages. The idea with pages is you make that connection between your content and the blueprint that has been used and the template that has been used with the file name. So you choose project.txt, and Kirby will automatically load pages project.yaml, and it will also load the project template. So that's a very easy connection. But for image files or for assets in general, we can't use that connection or this simplicity in using the file name, because the link between the asset itself and the metadata text file is already creating that link, and we can't break that link by renaming that, so we can't put the template in there. And so the idea behind this is that you use an additional template field in your metadata file to choose the template. So we are choosing a template, and in this case, we call it gallery image, just to make sure that we have a unique name for this type of file. And now when we open this, you can see the gallery template is now appearing here. And still we have our alternative text field from the default YAML. So that hasn't changed, because so far we don't have a gallery image template or gallery image blueprint. So it doesn't really recognize that. So that's our next step. We go back to our files folder and we copy that and paste it again and rename it to gallery image. And now we have a blueprint file for it. So we can give it a title and we can start adding additional fields to it. So I would love to have a caption field. I would also love to have a photographer and maybe also a license text or a license name. And because we learned this before, we are going to use our grid system in our forms, in our form fields, to lay this out a bit more nicely. And now when we open this up, you can see that the additional fields have been loaded, the layout is there, and we can now start adding some stupid placeholder text. Cool. So by doing this, again, just double checking in our text file, everything's there, the fields are there, the template is there, this is all cool. So now we have a way to create such templates for our, or such blueprints for our different file types, for files in different pages, and we can fill them with different fields, and we can decide which kind of fields make sense for those files. But we still have a problem, because when we add a new file here now, and we click on that file, you can see the template is not assigned. So the wrong fields appear here. We want every file in that gallery to have the same fields and the same template. So we somehow have to fix that. Let's just get rid of it quickly. And let's see how we can fix it. So going back to our project.yaml for our page, for the page type, and having a look at the gallery section here, we can see that we haven't told this gallery section how which kind of template we expect for files in this section. And we have to specify this. So we use the template option and we put gallery image in here. And now every uploaded image gets that template. This is very much like pages in pages sections, if you saw the other video about pages sections. So in pages sections, you have the same template option available, and you can decide which kind of page should be allowed in such a section. So for example, in a list of projects, you only want projects. The only difference is that with the pages section, you have the option to list multiple templates. So you can do it like this and then add another template. For example, in a pages section, you might want to have a video project and an image project and a featured project, a template, and a kind of a selector between those different templates. And we've seen that before. And with files sections, this is not possible. You toss in files, and on upload, it can only assign one particular template. So you can only choose one template that will be applied. But once you do this and you upload stuff, wait, let me reload. And you upload more images. Those images will then have the right template. We click in there. You can see the gallery image template is loaded. The right fields are in there. We could now start adding content to it. Cool. So this is everything we had to do in order to set up this gallery correctly. And now we can start using that data in our templates. So when we open this, you can see our gallery here, and it's nice and simple. Yeah, so right. So now we want to find a way to use that data that we just stored for our images in this gallery here. So just display a caption below and use the alternative text. Whereas if we check this out already, Kirby is already quite smart, as it already recognized. No, it didn't. I probably haven't filled in something. Yeah, so when we put in the alternative text here, the alternative text field, if we just use an alt field, is a bit of a special case like the title field for pages. So Kirby recognizes that and looks for that field, and as soon as it's there, it's going to use it for your image tags. Okay, but that was just a little side note. Let me have a closer look at the template and then explain this a bit more closely. So here's the project gallery that we created in our project gallery template. And you can see we have this loop here where we loop through all the images that are uploaded to our page. And then we assign an image variable, and we use that image variable to create a link, to an absolute link to the image. And we can later use that, for example, in a lightbox or whatever to load the original size. And then within that, we resize the image with our automatic resize method to make sure that it's not larger than 1200 by 1200 pixels. And by echoing the result of that, Kirby will then take care of creating the image tag for us, or the image element, so we don't have to write it out. And as I said before, as I showed you in the inspector, Kirby will then automatically check out if the alternative text is there and will place it in that image element. If we need more control over the image element, let's say we need to apply a custom CSS selector, or we just want to write it out ourselves and have more control over our HTML, we can do that by, well, writing some HTML. Let's put the alternative text there. And I'm writing it with those breaks just to make sure that you can read it. Well, let's collapse this here. So we can use the same resize method, which gives us a resized image object. And instead of echoing the entire thing, which would then again create a full image element, we can use the image URL method afterwards, which only gives us the URL. So it's not the URL to the original size like up here, it's the resized version. So you have the resized version first and then URL of that. And for the alternative text, we can reuse the image object again and access the alternative field that we've created. So now we basically created the same thing that we had before. Let's check that out if it's true. Inspect the element again. So yeah, we have the same thing that we did before. The alternative text is now at the end of the image tag, but that doesn't really matter. But from here on, we now have full control to put in some class. We could get have a static class here, class name, or we could get that from another field that we put into our blueprint to control the layout, as I said before, or maybe some background colors or whatever you have in mind for your particular project. Another thing that I want to show, because we added those captions, we can now easily extend this and place it inside here and use that fig caption here. So now we can extend this a bit more and place our image caption field down here. We could now also mention the photographer if that's necessary. Maybe the photographer needs to be mentioned for some licensing reasons. Yeah, so this is now really, really easy like this. We only added the caption to the last one, but you get the idea. So we could fill this in now, make it nice with some additional CSS, and then just go from there. What's really cool about this is, again, the same thing as with pages. It's super easy to add fields later. So whenever you feel like, okay, now I have additional layout options or I have additional things that need to be mentioned, This photographer thing could be such a typical case where the client comes to you and says, we need to mention the photographer. No problem, just add the field there, add it to your template, and then you're good to go. Last but not least, I want to give you a few more options for the gallery itself. Just what you can do with it to make it look a bit nicer. Go to our project YAML. So this is the important part. Yeah, you set up the template, you set up a blueprint, and this is the most important part, to work with those file data, and then you can further optimize how the gallery looks like. So very much like with fields, Kirby automatically guesses the label or the headline for the section from the name that you chose for the section. If you want to have more control over that, you can create a custom headline. Another thing you can do is you can change the size of the cards. That is also possible with pages, for example. So we have tiny, we have small, we have medium, we have large, and we have huge as size options. And that will just give you different kinds of sized cards. It often makes sense depending on how wide your gallery is. If you put it full screen, wider or bigger cards make more sense than if you put it like in a half column like this. An additional option that we used for the pages before, and that you can also use for such file sections here, is the info text. And we can fill this with a template again. For pages, we use the page and then with some additional field. And here we can use the file option. And then, for example, we could put the alternative text as the file info here. So if we do that, we can instantly see, okay, this one has an alternative text. The other one don't really have text yet, so we might need to add it here. But you could also put the dimensions here. So that is a method that is built into Kirby that gives you the dimensions of a file if it's possible. So for a PDF, it's not possible, but for an image file, it's possible. For a gallery, this is quite cool, because then you can instantly see the dimensions of the images and see, okay, this one is too small or this one is too big, etc. So that gives you a certain kind of flexibility to work with the info text that you put in there. You can change the size, as I just showed you. You can also put help text below the gallery, so you could add additional information about the image formats or kind of things that your editors should look for when they upload images. All of this is possible. And as a last thing, what I want to show you is validation for such gallery sections. Very much like what we've seen with fields, you can also validate what is being uploaded to galleries. So for example, you can say there needs to be at least one file in this gallery, or at least 4 files in this gallery. And there shouldn't be more than 10 files in this gallery. This makes sure that you don't upload too much, or that you upload anything at all before you publish the page, just to make sure that the layout doesn't break. So this is quite useful. But you can also specify what kind of files are accepted in such a gallery. And this is not controlled in the file section itself. This is controlled in the blueprint for the file type. So for example, in this case, for the gallery image, we can put an accept option here, and then we can say we only want to allow images. So this is a super useful example in this case, where you say, okay, you don't want some PDFs to end up in there. It doesn't really matter, because we filter it out anyway in our project template later. But again, it shouldn't be possible in the first place. So as soon as you do that, and you try to upload something that doesn't make sense, so let's just go in here. You can see the disabled options, so you can't even upload PHP file, for example. But if I go here, I can upload JPEGs, or I can upload PNGs. And this can be further specified, so you can say, want to allow JPEGs and I want to allow PNGs, but I don't want to allow GIFs, for example, or GIFs, for example, or however you pronounce them. So yeah, this is a very important setting in my opinion. And this can be even taken further. So you can say, I want to allow images, but they should have an orientation of landscape, or they should have a max width of 1200 pixels, or a min width of 1200 pixel. And there are more options available here. You can also check for the size, the upload size, the min upload size, or the max upload size. So there are a lot of things that you can control here in order to make sure that whatever ends up in those galleries makes sense for that particular page type. This is pretty much it. This is like a very quick overview of what you can do with those file sections. It gets very powerful when you combine them. So when you have multiple file sections and you have a gallery here, and then maybe you have an additional file section for a cover, or a hero with a slider, or you have an additional file section for PDFs down here, and you only allow PDFs for maybe an architecture project page where they have maps and blueprints and all kinds of plans that they want to provide as well. So the possibilities are pretty endless here. And yeah, you have a lot of control with those assets that are uploaded per page. In a later video, we are also going to have a look at global asset management, as I mentioned before. So when you want to upload a pool of images that should be available everywhere, we will also have a look at how to link images or assets from different pages. So you can build relations between images from one page and another page. And that's also an important part. But for now, this is everything about file sections. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.